This is Mission Qualfon, a monthly podcast that takes you inside the workings of our company, but not just the ins and outs of business. We look at the ideas and insights that make Qualfon truly unique. As a company, we are committed to being the best and making each person's life better. Join us as we get to know and learn from people from across the organization. What's their story? What have they learned? And how do they live out Qualfon's mission? Welcome to Mission Qualfon.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Mission Qualfon Podcast. Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, Marisol. Are you ready for another episode?
I am ready. We have actually been getting requests. We're at episode, I think this is 53.
53.
And I was telling you earlier this week, people have binged us and would like more content. And I thought it would be a nice time to say thank you. Thank you again for listening to us. Thank you for subscribing. Mm-hmm. And we are glad that you have listened to us. We produce the podcast twice a month. Is that bi-monthly? That is bi-monthly, right?
It's bi-monthly. We do it every 2 weeks. So I don't know if that matters, if that works out to be bi-monthly, but
is it bi-weekly? I don't know.
It's semi-monthly. I don't know, but every 2 weeks is what we do. Yes.
Every other Friday, there is a new podcast uploaded and there for everyone's listening enjoyment. We know that seems to be the frequency that Jeremy and I can stick to, and we've been consistent, and we're glad that everyone has continued to grow with us.
Absolutely.
We're definitely growing, and it's exciting. So A couple notes before we get into the interview, which I'm super excited about. One, you can learn all about our company. I know that we talk about the mission all the time. We are a company. You can find out all our information at qualfon.com. You can also follow Jeremy and I on LinkedIn. And please, as always, make sure to subscribe to the podcast. How are you doing, Jeremy?
I'm doing well. And I know why you're excited about today's episode. It's because we're interviewing an operations person.
Yes, I love operations. I love it from afar. But I do. I have a special place in my heart for operations. We have Jason Lancaster joining us. He is someone who has been recommended to us numerous times. Mm-hmm. And I think when you listen to the interview, you'll understand why. I don't know. There's just a kinship with people in operations. I joke with you that if I'm on the phone with them, my go-to is try to get off the phone as quickly as possible with them, because I just know they have 1,001 other things that their attention is needed for. So any chance I get to kind of hang out with someone in operations, I just love it. It's sort of, I just spilled water all over my computer.
Well, while you're doing that, while you're cleaning that up, I'll just say this. I've had the opportunity to work with Jason on a couple of issues. And the problem with working with me, what the projects I'm on is I'm usually asking people to do things outside of what they're normally doing. Like, for instance, working with Jason, there was a request to put together some financial training for some of our leaders in our continuous education training. And so I reached out to Jason and said, hey, Jason, could you create these? He was our subject matter expert on a couple training modules that we're doing. And like you said, he's super busy. Folks in ops are always busy. And so I'm just basically asking them to add some extra stuff to their plate. And Jason did a great job. He didn't complain. He was very, very helpful and easy to work with. So, I'm looking forward to our conversation too.
Yeah, I think ops people in general are just, they will find the time to help and grow and improve any kind of systems or operations or training or anything that we can do.
Yeah. So we want to welcome our guest, Jason Lancaster, who's the managing director of CES Shared Services. And Jason, we're going to get to your background and all of that. But first, help us understand what Managing Director of CES Shared Services means.
Sure, no problem. So basically, I have responsibility for the teams that support the operations group under operations. So for example, that would include our fiscal operations team, which helps with forecasting and planning and financial operational insights to the operations team. The workforce quality assurance, learning development teams all roll up under me, as well as some operational reporting and facilities and contract management.
So give us a little thumbnail sketch, Jason, of how you've arrived here. How did you find yourself here at Qualfon? So kind of give us a little of your background.
All right. Well, I guess at this point, it was probably about 11 years ago. I started with a company called Dialogue Marketing. And with Dialogue Marketing, I was responsible for all of operations. Dialogue Marketing was acquired along with another company called Nova One and Budco to form Dialogue Direct. And then obviously Dialogue Direct was acquired by Qualfon.
Mm-hmm. And so what led you to this career path that you're in right now? I mean, when you were a kid in school, did you think, I want to manage CES shared services when I grow up? I mean, how did you get where you're at?
Did you start out, someone told me you may have started out as an agent in your story of origin, but I don't know if that's true. Is that true?
It is true, and I did. My plan was to go to law school. I had started down that path, and I was studying, philosophy and political science in school. At some point, I ended up moving to Washington State. I'd gone out to visit some friends out there in the Seattle area, and just fell in love with the area. So I planned to move out there and get, residency and then, continue with law school. And when I moved out there, I got a job working in a call center as an agent on the phones. And, in a very short amount of time, I managed to move up to supervisor, to an operations manager, and then a site director when we opened up a second location. And then ultimately at that company, I was the vice president of operations, and we had about 6 small locations, about 50 seat call centers.
I was going to say, I heard that, and we always like to highlight it because we know we have our associates who listen to the program. And I started on the phone. I don't remember, Jeremy, did you? We have a sound that we.
Yeah. We sometimes play a sound effect, when someone says they started out as an agent. So we'll add that post-production, Jason. You might hear that. But yeah, I started out as an agent 2 years ago.
Yeah, and it's an incredible opportunity to work in this environment. I'm not even just speaking for Qualfon, but in this industry, that first day you can walk in and you could be like, this is not for me. And gosh, 20, 30 years later, you're sitting around on a podcast with a group of people, and you have this vast amount of experience across multiple different logos and clients, and Jason listening to all the groups that roll up under you and the different titles you've had over the years. You understand, the acquisition and the shifts in this industry. It could be a wonderful career for people. I know for myself and for others.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great industry. There's so many different career paths within the call center. You have career paths for people who are interested, again, in the quality assurance, or people that are more sort of interested in the math or the numbers. You have opportunities in finance. You have opportunities in workforce and planning. And so it's just one of those industries that, because you spend time, moving through these different departments, you really get an opportunity to have exposure to many different types of roles. And I really think there's an opportunity for anybody.
I have to ask this, Jason, as I live in Washington State, so I'm a big fan of Washington State. So what took you back from Washington State to, you're in Michigan now, correct?
Yes. After my time at that first organization, I took a new opportunity with a larger company that was based in Ohio, just outside of Columbus. And so I moved to that organization. I spent probably about 8 years there. Started out in client services and account management, moved up and actually ended up being responsible for all of the client services department there, and then head of operations there before joining dialogue marketing in Michigan.
There's a question that I get often that I think you probably have similar experience and can speak to, which is we can get stuck on titles, what a title is. And I learned this lesson early on because of acquisitions. And one company, I had this division or this group under me, and then with an acquisition or a sale or a merger, my my whole role shifted. It's an industry where you kind of go with the punches, but growth is exponential to how much effort you're willing to put into it. And I just think it's really wonderful that you have this vast experience in different roles. I believe you were a chief officer at one point at one of the companies. Am I wrong?
Yes, for dialogue marketing, I was the chief operations officer. And so again, in that role, I had responsibility for all of the call center operations, which then also included the QA, the workforce, the training. And at that time, also our person office group was part of my responsibility.
What do you pull from that kind of experience around, titles or career pathing for people? Because I think people in operations, I almost want to say, like, you have the world at your feet if you've put in years of operations, because you have this immense background where you can pretty much walk into a lot of different verticals and feel like a subject matter expert. So I was just wondering what your thoughts on that are.
I feel like titles are tricky because different organizations, different industries may refer to significantly different positions based on a title. For example, I had a friend who worked in the banking industry, and the tellers at the bank are assistant vice presidents, but they have really no responsibility, no direct reports. And so I guess for me personally, I've never been focused on my title. It's really, what are the expectations for my job and how can I support the people that I'm working with or that are working for me? I think one of the other things that I've found to be important and true over time is, whether someone reports to you or not, or you report to someone or not, you give them the same sort of work or effort or response that you would, if they were your direct reporter, if they were your direct supervisor. I think one of the things that's important, and it's part of our Strides values, is teamwork. And so it's really, how do we get the job done? How can I do my part to support?
So Jason, having worked in a lot of different roles with a lot of different companies, you've been through the whole merger acquisition thing. I would just be curious to know, what were your thoughts about Qualfon's mission? When Qualfon comes in and they're talking about Strides values and the Qualfon mission, I guess it's a two-part question. First of all, what were your initial thoughts about the mission? And now that you've been part of Qualfon for a few years now, what are your thoughts about the mission?
It's an interesting question. With each of the organizations I've worked for, from Dialogue Marketing, Dialogue Direct, and now Qualfon, there was a very similar sort of mindset of, take care of the employees, that, happy employees matter, that, we want to, act as a family. And so when, I initially learned of the acquisition by Qualfon, I guess one of the things that was comforting is a lot of those same things that were important to me in previous organizations existed at Qualfon. What I found after being at Qualfon is we do it, we execute considerably better than any organization I've been part of in terms of sort of living that mission and delivering on those commitments. With all the other companies, it was almost aspirational. We want to put employees first. We want to help people, make their lives better. We want to, support their families and think of it as more than a business. but there weren't the structural sort of institutional things in place to make sure that that happened. And it was really the focus of the organization and sort of why we do what we do.
And, it's no accident, Marisol, and I know this has come up already on the podcast, but I just want to reinforce this point. It's no accident that Jason mentions these Qualfon values were already very familiar. And that's part of the process when we acquire these companies. That's what we're looking for, that there's already a cultural fit. Qualfon has Strides values, Dialogue Direct had their Vibes values, which lined up pretty much spot on with our Strides values. So it makes total sense that when people come on board like Jason, they feel a comfort because they've already been part of an organization that has similar values. I just wanted to throw that point out there.
Yeah, I appreciate the alignment. It might be a good time. I'm going to put you on the spot there, Jeremy, to break out the acronym Strides for listeners who may not know it.
Yeah, well, our Strides values are, Strides is an acronym for these values. That's 7, right? Strides is 7 letters. I'm counting in my head. But the Strides is service, teamwork, results, integrity, dignity, encouragement, and spirituality. And, Jason mentioned that he already kind of felt this familiarity in Dialogue Direct, for example. And I was actually out in Highland Park and I toured the facility. It's a beautiful facility. And, they, like Qualfon, they had a lot of signage and a lot of things about their values. So it was a really good fit. And Dialogue Direct is just, one of those companies that has become part of the Qualfon family over the last 7 or 8 years since I've been here. But yeah, it's no accident that there's that lineup of values with these organizations.
So Jason, was there a moment where you realized this was more than just an acquisition where these values aligned, where it was real, it wasn't just a sales pitch?
I think the fact that there's a mission department that is specifically set up to aid and facilitate these things, I think that was sort of the first clue. I think where it really hit home for me personally is there was a member of our workforce management team, which I had responsibility for at that time as well. Really a solid employee, great attendance, really good attitude. And, suddenly his supervisor sort of reported that he was missing work and that we hadn't heard from him in a couple of days. And when the leader of our workforce group had reached out and uncovered some more information, he found out that he was struggling personally. His father had some medical issues. He was taking time off to try to track down this medication that he needed. And as a result, he was, missing income. He was missing work time. And when we reached out to the mission office, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. When we reached out to the mission office, they stepped in and took over responsibility for finding the medication and helping this employee get it consistently. And they paid back the wages that he missed.
Don't worry. We have many episodes where our guests have gotten emotional.
And our hosts. Yes.
And so you're in good company. No, I think that's a beautiful, beautiful story. I haven't been in operations at Qualfon, and it's been many years since I've been in operations, but I've never worked at a business where we had something like Strides. And so that's always like a question for me in relation to operations is like, how does that work with a mission department? Like that must just be a completely different experience than I have. And I'm always curious about it because good Lord, could I have used a mission department in my career?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's so many individuals and so many unique circumstances. It was really just unexpected the level at which the organization was able to step in and help out this individual. And I think we've seen it time and time again when there's natural disasters or even within our own sites. And again, this is where I think the organizational structure helps encourage individuals that want to do those things, because within our individual sites, they organize, fundraisers and food drives and clothing drives and all these other great things to help out not only our team members and their families, but our communities. And I think it's really exceptional.
Jason, what is it that you find the most exciting about your job? So if you go home and say, I had a great day today, what is it that makes a great day for Jason at work?
And how many days do you lay on that pillow if they're completely exhausted, like with no energy left?
Well, there's so much going on, which again, I always say is a good thing. If we're not busy, it's concerning, because a lot of what my teams are doing are, again, new program pricing and forecasting and planning. And so when we're active, when we're busy, it means there's opportunity. I would say that the things that probably make me the most excited are when, one of my leaders of one of my groups achieves a goal that they've set. Because, again, my job is really to help the leaders of each of these individual departments achieve their goals and move their team forward and remove obstacles. And so when they're able to get a breakthrough, to complete a project, to structure things in a way that they've been working on for a while, those are probably the best days.
So, Jason, I have not been on a floor in a long time, but it used to be one of my favorite things to do. I loved the energy of that buzz, that like beehive buzz of a call center on the floor with agents and getting to know agents or new classes and so on. I know that when you probably attend as many meetings as anyone as we have at Qualfon, but if you were reaching a large number of our associates or future associates, what is something you'd like to impart? What are some of the leadership lessons that you've learned in your career or over time, or things that you wish you had known at a younger age? I know that's like a loaded, layers of question, but you get the spirit of it.
The first thing I'm going to say, I think, is it sounds so simple, but I've found it to be so true in our industry. The number one goal to being successful in our business is showing up. So many people don't. When you look at sort of even frontline agent attendance on our programs, where on an individual day we have anywhere from 5 to 15% of our team members are missing for one reason or another, showing up. And when those opportunities come up, it's saying yes. You may not want to work the night shift, but that's where the supervisor's needed in the call center on that particular program. Say yes, you get in the door, you work as a supervisor. Sometimes it's, hey, we need an ops manager to cover the weekend, so we're looking at current supervisors to fill in that role sort of part-time on the weekend. It's saying yes and taking advantage of those opportunities. It's, even little opportunities like, sitting in on client calibration sessions to understand how the quality process works and what our clients are saying, just the feedback and how they're thinking, those things give insights. And so much of being successful in this business is just showing up and taking advantage of opportunities that other people don't want.
Well, Jason, your name has come up I don't know how many times for the podcast. We knew we were going to have you on the podcast. I haven't had the pleasure of working with you a lot, but I have heard that, like, every time I said in the last week, oh, the next guest is Jason Lancaster, I got, oh my God, that's going to be such a good interview. Or did you know he was an agent? Or did you know he was a C-level? Like, people have a lot of fondness for you and your history and your leadership. Thank you so much for coming on. Is this your first podcast?
It is my first podcast. Absolutely.
You knocked it out of the park, which I had no doubt you would.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be on here, and hopefully everybody enjoys it.
And thank you for everything that you do for Qualfon, for our employees, for your incredibly lucky staff, because I know that you have a lot of people that look up to you.
Thank you.
Well, that was a great interview. And I also have to say, I think all of them so far in season 3 have been great. I really have enjoyed last week's podcast with Prashant. Mm-hmm. And Prashant, in case you're listening, my computer is okay.
Well, I think laptops are designed to hold an entire can of soda in them. Seriously.
I need to follow that. You know that there's probably some rule somewhere that says no open containers near a computer. I broke that rule.
But we won't tell anyone. It'll be our secret, Marisol.
Well, thank you, Jeremy, again for going on this podcast journey with me. It is funny talking to someone in operations. Always makes me think about my career, and I'm like, I don't know how I ended up sitting here with a mic. I'm talking to people in operations and not actually having to do operations, but I'm grateful. So I am very grateful for you and for Qualfon for allowing me to do this. I do think podcasting and writing are definitely my vocation. So,
well, I'm glad that I can work with you, and I'm glad you're able to do that. And you're always the one saying thank you. And I want to say thank you to everyone who's listening, who continues to listen. And it's just really great being able to do the podcast. So Marisol, thank you so much. And I'll see you for the next episode.
I'll see you for the next episode. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Mission Qualfon. Remember, you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Please subscribe. And we'll see you next time on Mission Qualfon.